I would like to remind everyone who's on the call this evening that as visionary readers, our mission really is to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond. Now, I will call our first speaker to join us on stage and to review the book of the month, and that is Miracle's perspective book, Miracle Chawane's book called The 5 Rand University, and that will be Anna Costa, who will be kicking us off in this meeting tonight. Anna, can you show your video and kick us off? The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and good evening, fellow visionaries, honored guests, speakers, and authors. I do apologize. I will be referring to notes as I haven't had time to memorize everything, and there's quite a bit to cover. We couldn't be more honored to read and review more an upbeat and inspiring book for 2023's first book club meeting. I'm Anna Costa, besides my cell phone ID of H-Man's wife. And tonight I'm so pleased to be reviewing Miracle Chawane's book titled The 5 Rand University, The Miracle Perspective. The book is the ultimate guide to achieve the person you are meant to be. I'd like to share 5 things about this book. Firstly, to kick off, it's a guide on how to approach your life. It's an inspiration and coaching tool to navigate by means of self-respect and ultimately self-responsibility. It's an honest, matter-of-fact, no-frills testimony of an author who's always been filled with enthusiasm and valuable leadership qualities, an author who was fortunate to have his father a pastor and also as his first mentor. Number 4, it's based on a solid foundation that we styled in the image of perfection, which only God can achieve. And why 5 Rand? That's the number 5th point I'd like to raise. Such an insignificant amount, isn't it? However, this was all the money that the author received from his father in the week that he had to be punished for neglecting his duties and for gambling his weekly 50 Rand away. Sorry, I'll have to go on to page 2. There are plenty of highlights which I'd like to delve into and expand on. However, respecting time constraints, I'll touch on 5, thus honoring the book's title. The first highlight is that Miracle Chawane urges us to take a step backwards and acknowledge where you come from. This enables you to know who you are, but we must take a further crucial step. You need to find out who you are meant to be. This forces you to move out of your comfort zone and push yourself forward with massive, effective action. Number 2, always say yes to opportunities in your quest to find out who you're meant to be. Sitting around daydreaming about your next bestseller or about your promotion at work is not going to bring you success or money in the bank. If any opportunities arise for you to benefit your self-development, see it as a gift and grab it and be active in participation. For example, something as enjoyable as a book club, doing a review, or something a bit more challenging like joining the Toastmasters. Only in doing will you learn from your mistakes and identify your strengths and weaknesses. By sitting back, you're simply just going to be lazy and amount to not much. Number 3, learn to let go and say no once you find your path towards who you are meant to be. Learn to be focused and say no to activities which no longer serve you in your quest for self-mastery. Isn't this an eye-opener? This I really find refreshing to read. Number 4, there is a whole chapter dedicated to fear, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This covers quite a funny and sad episode where the author stole his mother's car and unfortunately crashed it. This incident was a massive point of no return for our author. Left with fear, this crippled him and impacted his decision-making and also impacted on his leadership capabilities. When starting his journey for self-mastery, he unraveled this pivotal childhood incident, and he learned that our past never ignores us. If you don't let go of fear, it takes its grip on you and defines who you are. Fear lies to you and you listen, and it becomes your reality. It then shapes how other people perceives you, and this is not conducive on your search to self-discovery. But Miracle suggests you do this. Acknowledge your fear. See it as an indicator that you're about to do something really important. See it as a signal for you to grab courage and on board and to intervene. Embrace fear for what it is. It's an excitement and an invitation for courage to come on board for a great adventure. Then number 5, I've identified 3 selfies, which I find quite amusing. Self-love, self-respect, and self-worth. These are quite interlinked. Another eye-opener for me was self-love. The term unconditional love often gets thrown about, and more often than not, it's to evoke guilt. Unconditional love. Miracle takes on a refreshing take on this. It's an practical type of love to try, apply, and to sustain. And why is this? Simply, humans always have conditions. Only God has the ability to love unconditional. That's quite a relief, isn't it? Self-respect. More often than not, humans tend to love others before they learn to love themselves. This is simply called self-disrespect. Therefore, self-respect is more important than love. You must first respect yourself so that you can set standards for how you expect others to treat you, to love you, and respect you. If you do not respect yourself, you'll be fooled by love and open to nonsense and abuse. Love will mislead you, as does fear. Right, so why I enjoyed this book. The 5 Rand University by Miracle Chwane is a whirlwind memoir told in first-person POV by a mover and shaker. His enthusiasm is contagious. His coaching and deep insights are invaluable and inspirational. The writing is entertaining and has appropriate quotes. It's got interesting dialogue and it's sprinkled with many funny anecdotes. It's a gripping and unforgettable read. Thank you, Miracle Chwane, for sharing the miracle perspective with the world. Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow guests and authors.
Thank you so much, Anna. I love your conclusion for thanking Miracle for sharing his perspective with the world. Once again, I will welcome now our next speaker. Also, Abu, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Very much. I was introducing myself as Anna Mvubu, and I'm one of the reviewers for the 5 Rand University, the ultimate guide to the person who you are meant to be by Miracle Chwane. It's an honor for me to review this book. I know personally the author, and I had to read this book twice. And I'm encouraging those that haven't bought the book to buy the book. It's a simple read book. I started reading it again yesterday, and today I'm done with it. So it's 119 pages book. It has a lot of information, a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, a lot of perspective and fun as well. So I laughed a lot, and there are a lot of stories that I was able to relate to in terms of my personal experience, and there are some lessons that I even shared with my family, and I therefore encourage any person who doesn't have the 5 Rand University to buy it. Okay, I was so pleased to read through the dedication where he mentioned the name of the siblings, and I laughed about the name of the siblings, and I'm encouraging the readers to go to look at the dedication as well. But what I loved was the foreword by the dad and how he explained what he saw in Miracle. And indeed, what he mentioned in the book is what we read in his book, and it's what we are seeing. And he's mentioning that he moved Miracle from the home school to another school, and that particular school, he wanted 3 things. The first was to be a Christian school, and the second was be a school that will teach his child responsibility. The third one was to teach him independent, because he was looking to have a leader, a powerful leader. And we've got a leader who is Miracle Chwane. So the book has about 11 chapters, if I can call them chapters. He talks about the 5 Rand University, which I have prepared to talk about, but because Anna has already mentioned it, I'm not going to talk about it, where he demonstrates where the name of the book comes from. The second one was the second one is, where do you come from? Being a pastor's kid. And there he mentioned the part of identity. And people put some pressures to different people because of the status that you have. And in this regard, he mentioned that he lost his identity because of being a pastor's kid. And he's mentioning here that being a pastor's kid is hard because of the expectation of the society or Christians as well. And when they look at you, they call you, or they look at mini Jesus. And that's what he mentioned. And I loved reading that. He also mentioned about how to believe in yourself, which was very important. And I'm going to highlight a bit on the lessons I learned. He talks about becoming the person you are meant to be, where he addresses the issue of indecision, lack of commitment, self-discipline, responsibility. He talks about your path holding you back and the obstacles of identity, which is very important. He highlights the part of fear, and he talked about the story of him stealing a car from his mother's car, and Anna has already mentioned it. He talks about limiting beliefs, which was very key for me as well, and what the teacher called him when he was in school, and that had impact on his self-identity. And he talks about the ultimate guide to becoming the person you were meant to be. And I feel so great to talk about this because I looked at my life. I learned a lot from this book. And the question is, who are you? Do you know who you are? And when you read this book, he assists you in terms of understanding who you are when you introduce yourself to say, this is who I am. And he gives those tips. There's a part where he talks about your self-image, self-worth, fixing your character, investing in yourself and becoming resourceful, having self-respect, self-love, and self-worth, and finding your purpose, which is very great. And he talks about believing in your decision, in your vision, and also he talks about the miracle perspective. And I want to highlight a few things that I learned from the book. He talks about three things: the power of identity. For us as human beings, we are identified based on the our past, our present, and our future. And in his book, Miracle has demonstrated practical examples where he was vulnerable and he was authentic with his experience, highlighting his past, his present, and the future, which was very great because we were able to relate. He talks about the different stories that and the experience that he went through and how he overcame. And what I loved as well was he brought the issue and he brought the solution as well, and also the lessons that we can get from him. Now, the other thing that he also talked about, when he talked about the 5 Friends University story, he challenged me. I'm a parent, and he challenged us to say, as parents, there are lessons that teachers are teaching, but there are also some lessons that we need to teach our children from our family. And before I leave, let me talk about, he talked about the decision and the power of taking action. And if you are not taking any decision, you are indecisive, you are not taking an action, there's nothing that will change. And with that, because I see my time is up, I want to thank Miracle for the lessons that we have learned. We are going to self-respect, self-love, and have self-worth, and we are going to take responsibility. Those are the lessons that we learned from your book. Thank you, Miracle.
You are welcome. You are welcome, Anna. Thank you so much for that review.
Okay, that's wonderful. Firstly, thanks very much for having me here this evening. So it's a great honor to be able to join this community. I really appreciate it. So 2 books that I've done. So I'll start with how this came about. I wrote 2 books in literally a year. The first book, which was Puff Adders and the Panicum, took 8 months. The second book, Uncle, took 3 months. So from 8 months to 3 months, it was quite a mind-blowing exercise for myself how I could write 1 book in 8 months and then write the next in 3 months. So there's definitely some kind of growth as you go and you write more books, you become more adept at what you're doing. But to get to the books, so I'll start with Uncle. And Uncle is a book that I wrote through, I call it a fictional, factual account of the grabbing of a continent. And that's our continent, Africa. And it's all about two Pakistani brothers that escape from occupied Kashmir province, and they make their way to South Africa, and the adventures they have on the way down through, they come via China, Bangladesh, the Maldive Islands, Mozambique, and then eventually end up in East London on board a Chinese freighter. They then set about establishing businesses here, and it's all done through the support of the Chinese government, who are busy with underhanded dealings on the continent, and they plan on rhino poaching and how they access the SASA grant money in this country and channel it back to China. So there's a lot on the go. It's a fast-paced book, and it certainly will grab you by the scruff of the neck. And if you aren't aware of some of the things that are happening in this country, it will highlight them for you. So I enjoyed writing the book. It's full on. It's not a slow-paced book, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and it's raw in some areas because that is how life is sometimes. But whoever wants to read it, they can go grab it on digital format, Amazon, Smashwords, Kobo, you name it, it's all out there. And then Sula Book Distributors are the paperback distributors for me in South Africa, and you can get that from the middle of next month in bargain books, exclusive books, and independent bookstores. So that's Uncle. I really enjoyed writing that book, and I hope whoever reads it that they enjoy it too. Moving on to Parfaiters in the Panicum. So Parfaiters in the Panicum, which is this book here. Hopefully you can see it. Okay. So I was a practicing auctioneer for 7 years, trained with the South African College of Auctioneering, and I ran auctions dealing with livestock, mostly cattle and small stock like goats, and then property, and then wildlife, buffalo, giraffe, things like that. It was a lot of fun. It was great. I learned a lot about this country's heritage, and also got to deal with some very interesting human characters. And growing up in the Eastern Cape, my first experience with a Parfaiter was at the age of 13, a real proper experience, and I write about it in the book. And when I sat down and worked out a title for this book, Parfaiters in the Panicum came to mind. The Eastern Cape is a place that offers promise and opportunity, and it's all there, but beware the Parfaiters in the Panicum. There's always something that's looking to strike you. And in this book, you'll come across a lot of good, wholesome adventure. And then you'll also come across a chapter where you understand why the book is called Parfaiters in the Panicum. And it challenges a little bit about the legal system in this country, and also answers or asks a few questions. You know, once you put the book down, you'll have a few questions, I'm sure. But I think it's a good read. It took me 8 months to write, an emotional journey. But I did it, and then I felt inspired and went on and wrote the book Uncle. And Uncle is a thread of 4 books. So the first one is done. The second one I'm busy writing, The Legacy, and then it will be Return of Baba, and then Sins of the Father. So yeah, I've got some writing to do, and it's just great to be talking to you people this evening. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andrew, for that. As you're talking about your first book, Uncle, and as you mentioned that it's a fiction, but as we're reviewing it, I got a sense that this book might actually, this is just an assumption, but you'll correct me, because the way you explain it, you know, some fictional books, they are based on true stories. As you're explaining the journey of what is happening in the book or the whole story, I get a sense that, you know, in different countries, there is always this point whereby someone would like to share information of what is happening, or the journey of individuals who are migrating from different parts of the world. But because they feel that information that they gained in that journey is valuable to be shared with the world out there, but for some reason they don't want to reveal true characters of those individuals who want to share the information which might be useful in that particular country, probably where they finally landed and settled. So could it maybe, I don't want to put maybe, I don't want you to reveal all the information here. Is it maybe probably the case with your uncle, with your book, Uncle?
There are instances in this book where those things happened.
Okay.
And obviously I had to, improvise, make some other character names. But yes, I did wake up in a military hospital in Oshakati with a guy in bed next to me with ears around his neck, things like that. They did happen. And I did come across, I followed instances of rhino poaching around Grahamstown 15, 20 years ago. And those things did happen. And, we know that Africa as a continent is under pressure from outside sources. And so I've used that in my thread, in my story. And the two characters, Uncle and Baba, well, yes, I did have two Pakistani friends that were the inspiration for this story.
Amazing.
So there is a lot of fact, but it's also a fictional story.
I guess it takes a lot of creativity to combine reality and fiction and make something very, gripping and as enticing as a novel, one of those great novels. I haven't read your book, but now that you have explained, I'm even curious to find out, okay, you mentioned that it will be available, this is Uncle, in paper format. And perhaps if someone wants to get it directly to you and also interested to find out what is the price probably for each of the books that you've just reviewed, what is the price range, or what is the price?
So what I'm happy to do is I've got the ebook format of Uncle, and I'm happy to send that on to you, and you can distribute it on to whoever you want to for free of charge. And I would just like people to read this book, and I think it will open some eyes and let people realize what's going on in this country, because I just want to draw attention to something quickly in this book. It's a very small aspect of the book, but to me, it's an important aspect of the book, and I think people should take note of it. So in this book, Uncle, there are two characters, Amaxhosa woman. These women have got no names. They've got no facial descriptions. They are basically non-entities. And they are married off to Pakistani men. And that is almost like human trafficking within their own country. They are being trafficked in their own country, and they don't even realize it. And so the format of these characters in the book is to illustrate that many people in this country are either being taken advantage of, or they've been manipulated in a way that they are not aware of. So it's small things like that, that I've seen. I've come across it. I know what's going on, and I'm using this book to highlight certain things like rhino poaching, the drug trade, human trafficking, etc., etc.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. I think the fact that you've mentioned you are willing to share the PDF copy with us and for me to distribute. Usually in our book club, we do not encourage the sharing of digital books, but now that is coming from the author himself, I think we'll be more than happy, especially for the people who are listening now. Thank you once again, my brother Andrew, for coming to review your book with us. So I see Anna's hand is up. Maybe before I let you go, let's allow Anna to ask you a question. Anna, over to you, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes, thanks so much, Sibo. I wanted to ask Andrew Hutchinson. I'm curious to know, because I'm trying to also be a writer and put my thoughts and words into a book format. The comparison between writing an 8-month book and a 3-month book, was there a difference in how you approached in terms of plotting? Did you plot at all with your second book, or did you just have a few pointers where you just kicked off and it just all came into being, quite easily because the flow was easier? Could you highlight how it all went about in comparison with the longer time for writing versus the shorter time? Thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah, sure, Anna. So the first book, Buffett's The Panicum, was a lot of recollection, going back and remembering certain instances and remembering the sights, the smells, and trying to get it right. So that if anybody ever had to say, Andrew Hutchinson, this is nonsense, this never happened, I could actually stand there with conviction and say, no, it did, because that's how I remembered it. And in fact, it was like that. And in that book, I had to reference back to certain instances and make note and say, listen, this is actually recorded in archives here in Grahamstown, etc., etc. So there was, along with research, there was also a lot of recollection, which when you sit down and recall things, you sift and you sift and you sift, and then you get to a point and then you write it. With Uncle, it's a story. You're telling a story. The story's in you. Your imagination is working and it's flowing quick. It's quick. It's coming to you. You can see where you want to put your reader. You can see like what you want your reader to smell. You know what they must be seeing. So for me, it went a lot quicker in that type of writing. When it comes to factual stuff and making sure that everything is like correct, it seems to be a slow process for me. It might not be for others, but that was my experience. Whereas with storytelling, it just flows. So I hope that answers your question. But there is one thing that you should remember with storytelling as well, is that there is a certain amount of research. For me, it's geographical and historical research that went into this book, so that when I describe the areas that the story takes place in, I get the geography and the fauna and the flora correct, and also the history, especially of our country. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks so much, Andrew. That does definitely explain, and I appreciate your response. And we look forward to reading Uncle, and then to the other next 3 parts: The Legacy, The Return of the Barber, and Sins of the Father. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, definitely. Please let us know, Andre, as soon as book number 3 and 4 are out, and share with us. Probably would love to have you come back and then review them as soon as they're out. Thank you so much. Now we still have a lot of time, but we are left with only one reviewer, and that is our guest speaker. One more speaker is not able to join us due to load shedding. So we'll jump straight into our last speaker, and that is our guest speaker. Before I allow her to take the stage, I am going to do a quick introduction so that we get to know her better before she tells us more about her book. Her name is Bushes Kosana. She is a 20-year-old author, musician, and student at the University of Pretoria that lives in Pretoria. She started her writing journey in primary school and has never looked back since. Her one and only book, The Beautiful Anthology, is a collection of her thoughts and feelings over the years, and she has come today to share it with us.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, ma'am, and we can see you as well. There you are.
Okay.
Okay, the stage is yours. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invite, and I appreciate the position that you've placed me to be able to speak about my book a little bit today. So I wanted to take the short section of my speech from Toastmasters, because I spoke for Toastmasters this month as well. I think it explains how my anthology is without giving out too much information. So I say, in essence, I see my book as a journey a journey that the speaker goes through. And I say speaker because not every single poem or short story is something that I personally experienced. And some of the poetry is written purely from what I call intuitive writing, meaning writing all my thoughts in one go and then configuring it to be structured better only thereafter. There are different phases which had an impact on the speaker as an individual. For example, the first phase, titled Buying Brilliance, is when the speaker, young, naive, and inexperienced, comes into the world, not knowing what to expect and trusting what everyone says. But on page 18, she realizes the true selfish nature of humans. And I quote, "I looked into a broken mirror and realized why it is such bad luck. It slaps us with the realization of our inner savageness. It reminds us of our inability to truly love others because we clearly do not love parts of ourselves. The world teaches the speaker about its evilness, and in phase 2, she struggles to cope with this realization, even saying, and I quote, "One afternoon, my bathroom viewed a sanguinary scene. As I had blood on my hands, for I was keen on becoming a statistic, as living in this world has become so unrealistic." I placed this phase into my book, not to evoke hopelessness, but to paint a pragmatic picture, as each person in this meeting has had that moment where life snatches your innocence from you, one way or the other. Sometimes it's in a painfully traumatic way, but many make it out of that void of missing that innocence. This is what phase 3 is all about. It is titled Healing and just speaks to the fact that one should not give up. Life is not easy, but with love and support from others and for yourself, you can make it through. You do not need to do it all on your own, for that will be a heavy weight to carry. The last phase, titled Learned Power, ties with my discussion at the beginning of the book. In the discussion, I argue that there is such a thing as wisdom wounds, that wounds build character and characters build through experiences. And these experiences bless us with a unique perspective on certain aspects. And this perspective subsequently hands us well-deserved wisdom. The speaker used the wisdom to go through life now, not dreading the trials of life, but embracing them to continue on. This is what good books did for me. They evoked this belief in me that I could also make something worth whisking someone away with their imagination. For a good book changes one's perspective, shifts one's focus, and instills hope and healing in the hopeless and traumatized. Trust me, just try it out. You never know what you could find out. And then I added a Dr. Seuss quote that says, "The more you read, the more you'll know. And the more that you learn, the more places you go." So that's the section that I mainly wanted to discuss. I don't know if people have questions, but yes. That's what I wanted to say.
I truly hope they do. Thank you, Buhle, for that beautiful review. I love the Dr. Seuss quote because as lovers of books in this book club, we concur to that quote a lot because if you love to read, if you love to learn, you definitely will go to different places. I am actually paraphrasing that quote, but basically in a sense, that's what it means. So everyone, please help if you want to, if you have a question for Buhle, you can raise your hand and ask quickly. And as maybe you're preparing a question, I will ask quickly. I know I have your book, Buhle, and I've bought it. I want you to tell the audience where can they get the copy of your book and how much does it go for?
Okay, so you can either get it from me directly for 175, and I add a 60 Rand if you want to deliver to your place or a PEP nearby your place. And then you can also get it online, Amazon, and I have the link for that as well if you want it online.
Okay, perfect. I can't see any hands for now, but I'm sure you have answered my question. I'm happy with that answer. No questions from the audience, going once, going twice. And maybe another one from me. What inspired you to write this book? Because I love, the poems specifically for me, it sounded as if this is someone who's like really in love. Like there's a whole journey. It's like someone who has been through in that journey of love. And then there is some challenges or probably experiences that made that change of perspective in how not only you view relationship, but the whole world in general. As you're reviewing, you talk about how we can turn our wounds into wisdom, and also how the experiences can make us into better human beings and stuff like that. So I want to start from the beginning. What inspired you to write this book?
So some of the poems are quite old. I'd written them when I was younger, like around primary school, and some were written at the time or during the year that it was published, which is 2021. And so basically some of the poems were things that I personally experienced, because if you're speaking about the aspect of love, I know I'm probably one of the youngest people here, so some people are like, what does she know about love? But there are certain situations that I went through, I would say, in experiencing my first love that were quite painful. And I think it changed my perspective on it as a whole. Knowing that it's beautiful, but not being so naive and trusting that people are just good people because they say they are, you know. So I hope I answered the question well.
I am answered, and I'm satisfied with your answer. Thank you for honoring our invite once again. You did the same thing with our Toastmasters Club, and then now in the book club we do the same. We truly appreciate it. We also appreciate all the other reviewers and other authors who came this evening to make sure that we have a very fun and successful meeting this evening.
Okay, I wanted to check with you if ever, because Miracle is here, if ever we can give him an opportunity for him to tell us where to get his book and how much is it.
Okay, great. Miracle, over to you, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, say loud and clear.
All right. I'm not sure if my video will be clear, and also, yeah, it's not clear. All right, not a problem. You can get my book from my website, www.themiracleperspective.com/5, the digit 5 Rand. So it's www.themiracleperspective.com/5 Rand. So it goes for 270. That is what the book costs. Thank you. To just take one more minute, I just want to express my gratitude to the two honors that did a lot of justice to my book. I felt like they're reviewing something I've never ever seen, and it made me feel really good. Thank you so much, ladies, for taking time to read and review my book. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome, sir. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, we have come to the end of our magic hour this evening. I wish you all a lovely evening, and until we meet again, good night.